Aokigahara Forest, one of the most famous forests in the world, unheard sounds, unreachable people, and thousands more. The story of 7 American explorers that began with curiosity and came to an end. After entering the forest, they stepped onto a path with no return. They actually went there to break beliefs and legends, but an ending that tore them away from life was waiting there silently, just as it had done before. And all that remained of them were only their own voices and strange sounds whose form could not be identified beyond what they said themselves. If you are ready, we are starting. Do not stop here, because I am sure you have never heard these events. Subscribe and like to be part of this moment. We came here as 7 people beyond what was said, and this place is truly terrifying. Probably none of us will make it out of here alive. If these recordings ever reach you one day, I want them to be investigated to lift one of the greatest veils of mystery in history. These words actually tell everything. What they saw was unclear, but they knew they would not be able to get out of there. When the audio recording started, the time was 4:07. We are inside Aokigahara Forest, at the foothills of Mount Fuji, in the place marked on maps as a dense wooded area, but never called that by local guides. They call it only the place you enter but cannot leave, and they were quite right about this. But science and exploration sometimes require this, putting your own lives in danger and not being able to return, just like those before us. There are 7 people here. 2 biologists, 1 acoustic engineer, 1 geologist, 1 forest guide, and 2 documentary filmmakers. But we did not come here to shoot a documentary at all. Let the official records list this as silence and natural frequency measurement. The real purpose is to match the source of the unexplained low-frequency vibrations that have been reported in the forest for a long time, and to reveal it. That is why we are here. The first day, everything was normal. Even Aokigahara's suffocating silence was as expected. The trees were dense, the light was scarce, the sense of direction was distorted, but the devices were working stably. There were no bird sounds, not even insect sounds. This was a known characteristic of this forest. In every legend and story we read about this forest before coming here, it was already mentioned. You cannot hear the sound of any animal, but you cannot even predict what will appear before you, from where, and from which silence. If our supplies ran out, it was so silent and calm that we would not even be able to find a bird or an animal. At dawn of the second day, the first anomaly was recorded. The acoustic listening devices detected an irregular fluctuation at a frequency so low that the human ear could not perceive it. It did not match the wind nor ground movements. The geologist told the engineer that this was not a microseismic event. The biologist added that it could not be animal-related, because the frequency resembled a breathing pattern. But we all knew that no living being could have such deep and regular breathing. As the hours passed, the feeling inside the forest began to change. The trees were the same. The ground was the same, but it was as if the emptiness had been filled. Something had been added, a weight that could not be seen but could be felt. Our guide stopped talking. He was normally a very talkative man, but after the afternoon he only walked. He did not answer our questions nor give directions. He just moved forward. This situation was actually disturbing everyone here at the moment. But since no one wanted to unsettle each other, no one spoke up, and we simply chose to keep moving. On the night of the third day, the first disappearance occurred. Our geologist engineer moved about 50 meters away from the camp area. Just to use the toilet, he had a flashlight with him. His radio was on. It should have taken him at most 2 minutes to return, but he did not come back. First, we called out to him over the radio. There was no response. Then we said his name. The forest did not echo. After 20 minutes, we went out to search. The light of the flashlights was getting lost on the tree trunks. The ground was uneven, but there were no tracks, no footprints, no drag marks. As if after a certain point, he had never existed. There was no trace at all, but the listening devices did not say that there was nothing around. Our devices had captured a very brief sound outside the camp area. This sound was like metal friction, but there was no metal around. Immediately after the sound, there was a low vibration and then a sudden silence. The frequency had been cut so abruptly that although the engineers thought it had been manually shut off, the fact that no one had touched the devices brought even greater fear and anxiety along with this silence. On the fourth day, 2 more people disappeared. This time they were together, one of the biologists and the documentarian. They were going to conduct a short exploration to examine an old lava tunnel inside the forest. The tunnel was visible from the camp area. It took at most 30 seconds for them to disappear from sight. 1 minute later, a sound came through the radio, but the sound was not speech. It was not breathing. It was more like a very faint friction sound made by something that was listening. A friction sound similar to the metal sound we experienced during the first disappearance. As if someone was rubbing the microphone not against their mouth but against their skin. The acoustic engineer trembled because the devices had classified that sound as a human voice. But there were no words, no syllables, no intonation, just a sense of presence. After that night, our perception of time in the forest became distorted. Hours were not passing, or we were not noticing them. No one could sleep. Even though we lit a fire, the darkness grew thicker. The guide said the map no longer had any meaning because the compass was not working. The magnetic deviation was not normal. Things had now completely spiraled out of control and reached an irreversible point. Days without sleep and our gradually weakening bodies began to prevent us from making healthy judgments and thinking clearly. On the morning of the 5th day, we began with another disappearance. This time the guide was gone, but there was no trace or evidence that he had left. None of us saw him leave the camp. His shoes were in the camp area. His bag was here with us, but he himself was gone, as if he had suddenly changed places. And at that moment, the devices signaled simultaneously for the first time on all frequencies, but there was no identifiable source on any of them, as if the forest itself had begun to breathe. This sound was not something you could distinguish. It was the same as those mentioned before. Human, wolf, or another predator, yes, each has identifiable sounds and separate tones and sensations, but this was not like that at all. After the guide's disappearance, the forest began to change its silence. This may sound like a strange sentence to you, but that is exactly it. The silence was no longer the same. Before, there was no sound. Now, sound itself was being forced not to exist. Our ears felt pressure, as if something was suppressing all vibrations in the surroundings, flattening them, holding them at a single level. When the acoustic engineer looked at the devices again, his face turned pale white, because the recorded data was no longer irregular. On the contrary, it was excessively regular. The wave interval showed a mathematical repetition. There was a pattern far too perfect to occur in nature. One of the biologists whispered, "This is not an animal." No one objected. Because none of us had any idea about this, everything said here and now carries importance for us and for you. We decided to leave the camp area, but we did not know where to go. Maps were useless. There was no GPS signal. The radio only gave static. Even though we were at the foothills of Mount Fuji, our sense of direction had completely vanished. The trees all looked the same. Every path we walked looked different when we returned. That afternoon, another sound was recorded. This time, the sound was coming from much closer. One of the devices detected an instantaneous peak frequency right in the middle of the camp area, but there was no one there. The signal was recorded as if something had passed between the devices, as if rubbing over the metal casings. But none of the devices had been knocked over. There were no marks on the ground. Branches were not broken. Right now, the exact same sounds experienced during the first disappearance were emerging again. And with each disappearance, it was as if something was leaving us a puzzle piece. It existed only in the recording. At that moment, we realized that the issue was not disappearing. No one was being taken. Something was choosing. Toward evening, the second documentarian began to tremble. He was by the fire, but he was cold. His eyes kept drifting toward the forest. When he said, "It is watching me," no one laughed, because we were all feeling the same thing. But for the first time, someone had said it out loud. Perhaps the one common thought passing through all of us was truly this: that someone or something was watching us very quietly and very carefully. When night fell, we left the audio recording devices on. We could not sleep. No one could close their eyes, because when our eyes closed, we felt the forest drawing closer. The sound that entered the recordings at 112 was different from the others. This time, the frequency was constant. The wavelength was long, and for the first time, it was rhythmic, like a heartbeat, but very slow. Slower than a human heart, but faster than any animal. As if something large, but resembling a mechanism more than a living being. The geologist said, "Not underground." The acoustic engineer said, "Above us." No one looked up. Hours later, one of the biologists disappeared. This time, none of us noticed. He was with us. He was by the fire. 1 moment later, he was gone. No sound, no shouting, no running, nothing. As if his existence had skipped a frame. But the devices did not lose him. At the exact second he disappeared, all microphones captured a short recording simultaneously. The same frequency, the same duration, the same sharpness. This was impossible. The devices were positioned in different locations. For them to record the same sound at the same time, the sound would have had to come from every direction, or be everywhere. We were no longer 7, but 3. And at that moment, we realized the forest was not surrounding us. We were inside it. The remaining documentarian began to cry uncontrollably. We couldn't stop him. We were afraid his voice would enter the recording. Because we had noticed that whenever someone panicked, the frequencies changed, as if something was reacting to emotions, especially fear. And then, the most terrifying thing happened. The sounds began to resemble speech. They weren't words, but there was tone, a rising and falling, repeating structure, as if something was trying to learn a language. It was imitating our breathing, our crying, our whispers, but each time a little closer. That night we understood that something in the forest did not know our names, but had memorized our voices. There were 3 of us. But the forest did not accept this. When we set up the devices again, silence no longer felt like silence. Aokigahara's suffocating stillness had turned into an ear-scraping void. It was as if the forest was not producing sound, but absorbing it. When we spoke, our words disappeared after a few meters. There was no echo, no return. The sound seemed to be buried into the ground. At this point, the acoustic recording device began to behave abnormally. Normally, when the environment grew silent, the frequency graph would flatten. But now, even with no sound at all, the lines were moving. Low frequencies were constantly fluctuating. Something was creating vibration, but this vibration matched neither wind nor animals nor movements of the Earth's crust. The engineer at the device said, "This is not movement, this is waiting." The thing following us was no longer moving, but we knew it was there. After a while, the distance between the trees changed. The path we had walked before seemed to have vanished. The trees had drawn closer together. This was not physically possible, but our eyes were seeing it. Our sense of direction was broken. The compass kept deviating. The magnetic field had become unstable. That was the first moment I smelled it. Wet, rotten, but not animal. It wasn't the smell of a wolf. It wasn't the smell of a dog or a wild animal either. It was more like a metallic rust smell, like blood left standing in a closed place for a long time. A smell that burned my throat and turned my stomach. Right then, one of the devices emitted a short signal. When I put on the headphones, my heart raced. Because what I heard was not a howl, but it wasn't a call either. It was like a sound trying to come out of a throat and failing. It wasn't a growl, it wasn't breath, it was caught in between. Trying to be familiar, but failing. And then, footsteps. You could tell the ground was being pressed, but the rhythm was broken. It started like a 4-legged walk, then shifted into a 2-legged pause. As if the body didn't know what it was. As if evolution had stopped halfway. When I turned the light, I saw nothing. But the beam of light suddenly scattered as if it had hit something. The air thickened. A shadow appeared. It wasn't clear, it wasn't sharp, but it had volume. Its shoulders were very broad, its head hung forward, its neck was muscular but disproportionate. It didn't stand like a wolf, but it waited like one. At that moment, the team member next to me whispered, "It's not looking at us." I didn't understand what he meant until it tilted its head slightly to the side. Its eyes were not looking at us but behind us, as if it wasn't watching us but measuring our reaction, as if what truly interested it was our chance of escape, like a predator that doesn't attack its prey. Patiently, silently. Then it happened. We heard a sound, but this sound wasn't coming from the forest. This sound was coming from the recording. From the device, we heard the breathing of the team member who had disappeared a few hours earlier. The same rhythm, the same panic, the same suffocating sensation, but that person was gone. The sound was real. But it wasn't live. It was as if it was being replayed, imitated. At that moment, we understood this entity was not making sounds, it was using sound, and it knew us. I took a step back. A branch didn't break, leaves didn't rustle, but the shadow in front of me moved at the same time, the same distance, at the same speed, synchronized. This was not an attack. This was a match. In the final recording, the frequencies peaked. They were very close to a human heartbeat, but not identical. More irregular, more hungry. And at that moment, the device went silent. Silence returned. But this time, the silence belonged to us. The sense of time inside Aokigahara had completely vanished. The distinction between night and day had disappeared, and darkness had settled over us like a fixed blanket. The forest was no longer a place, but a closed system. When we entered, there were 7 of us. Now I was alone. I remember clenching my teeth so I wouldn't say it out loud. Because anything spoken became real, and in this forest, being real was synonymous with death. When I picked up the audio recorder again, I realized the batteries had minutes left, not hours. Even so, I didn't turn it off. Because I now knew it wasn't an escape tool, but the only evidence that would remain. The only thing that could explain what happened in the forest were these recordings. If I disappeared too, at least the sounds would remain. It was then that I noticed it for the first time. Silence wasn't constant. It was layered. It had depth. In normal silence, your ears adjust, your brain fills the void, but here silence was active, it was suppressing, as if it were deliberately absorbing sound. Even my breathing vanished without echoing a few seconds later. The device suddenly signaled again. This one was different from the others. This time the frequency was stable, the waveform was regular. But still it belonged to no known living creature. It resembled a human voice, but it wasn't human. It was close to an animal sound, but didn't match the anatomy of any animal. It sounded like something trapped between 2 different biological structures. That was when I saw it again. Not between the trees in front of me. There was no distance. It hadn't approached. It had appeared. The entity's body was clearer than before. Its fur had fallen out in places, leaving parts of its skin exposed. These bare areas looked thick, rigid, and close to gray. It carried the skeletal structure of a wolf, but the joints were in the wrong places. Its neck was longer than it should have been. Its spine curved at an unnatural angle, as if its body had been reshaped over time. But the most disturbing thing was its face. Its eyes didn't reflect light. They didn't shine. They absorbed it. They weren't looking. They were examining. When I made eye contact, I instinctively wanted to run, but my body didn't respond. Because this wasn't a predator-prey moment. This was an evaluation. The entity tilted its head slightly to the side, and it spoke, but not with words. From the audio recorder came the voices of the missing team members, in the same order, with the same intonation, with the same fragments of sentences. These weren't previously recorded conversations. Some of them had never been recorded at all. These were sounds only we had heard, and now it knew them too. This entity wasn't attacking, it was imitating, it was learning, it was adapting. Through sound, through the human voice. That's why it had targeted our devices, that's why it had waited for our conversations. That's why it hadn't killed anyone immediately, it had listened for a long time. By the time I understood, it was already too late. The entity took a step. When its foot touched the ground, there was no sound. The leaves didn't move, but the inside of my eardrums felt like they were about to burst. A low-frequency vibration passed through my entire body. My stomach churned. My vision darkened. I started running, but I wasn't escaping. I was being herded. The forest was changing direction. Trees tightened, then suddenly opened up. Paths appeared, then vanished. Each time I realized I was going exactly where the entity wanted me to go without being forced. This wasn't a chase. This was guidance. Eventually, I emerged into a clearing and the ground had been dug up, but not by animals. It wasn't neat, it wasn't symmetrical, but it was intentional. As if something had lived here for a long time and organized this place. There were equipment parts, clothing, broken sensors, but there was no blood, no signs of struggle, as if people had come here and then dissolved. The entity stood at the edge of the clearing. It didn't approach. It spoke one last time. This time the voice was mine. But I wasn't speaking. The recording device trembled. The final frequency wave appeared on the screen, and then the battery died. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I was outside the forest. Rescue teams found me hours later. I was conscious, but I couldn't speak. For days, for weeks. Because whenever I tried to use words, I felt like the voice wasn't mine. A search was conducted in Aokigahara. Nothing was found, no bodies, no traces, no entity. But the audio recordings are still being analyzed. And at the end of the reports, there is a note not released to the public. In the final recording, an entity was detected that does not belong to human biology but uses the human voice. This entity has not been identified. I still wake up at night. Because sometimes in my dreams I hear my own voice, but I am not speaking. And the voice comes from Aokigahara. These events were entirely reconstructed based on audio recordings, and the audio data has not been altered. The only changes are the names not mentioned in the story. What still remains unexplained is why no one who went there for exploration and science ever returned the same, or returned at all. The answer to that has yet to be found. Your opinions are very important to us. Sharing them in the comments is valuable to us.